Welcome to Skye Sweaty Record Review, episode 126. It's the only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor immediately after leaving the YMCA. I'm recording in my son's room today. I don't know why. I like the vibe in his room. Must be the orange. And I'm going to be reviewing the album by Bill Callahan, A Shepherd in a Sheepskin Vest. And I've been doing this thing where I've been teasing things at the end. So at the end, I'm going to tell you at least 3 stories about Bill Callahan that are kind of funny and about my life with him. One of them involves a guy named Joe from Cape Cod. Whoa, mysterious. Stay tuned. Okay, so Bill Callahan. This is the thing. There's a certain there's different kinds of musicians I review on this show. People I've never heard of, people I've heard of but don't know, people that I don't like but I'm giving a chance. And then there's this other category, and Mountain Goats were a good example of this. A band or a musician that I loved when I was younger, but for some reason I grew out of them, or I just moved on, or just decided I wasn't going to listen anymore. And that's the case with Smog, which is a band from the 90s and 2000s, which moved me more than almost anything. I mean, I would listen to Smog all the time. And the thing about them was it's just this guy, Bill Callahan. So when I say Bill Callahan and I talk about Smog, I'm talking about the same person. He just went from being a one-named band to just his name. In a similar way to Joe from Cape Cod. What is the story with Joe to Cape Cod? Stay tuned to the end to find out. So, I'd listen to his music and I connected to it and it moved me and I loved the style of it, and ultimately, I don't know, I just kind of dropped out. I mentioned Brad, the Mekons fan. He stayed on, and every once in a while he'll tell me Skye, have you heard the new Callahan album? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it's good. So this show is forcing me to re-listen and to really pay attention. What is Smog up to? What is Bill Callahan up to? Well, he's up to a heartbreakingly good album. Now, it's not a full album. On the front, it says Side 1, so maybe this is half of something. I don't know. But I'm going to review it anyways, like it's a whole thing. I'm going to break it down into words and music. So as far as words go, he might be the best lyricist in music. I don't know. Or maybe my favorite. I don't know if he's the best. A lot of people make a lot of great lyrics. But I relate to his music in a way that I don't relate to other people's, and I always have. Somehow, something he's written has connected to me in a way that's really deep. And frankly, I imagine most of the people who are watching this are Smog fans, and they're probably like, yeah, Skye, I know what you mean. And I'm going to get to a song later where I'll talk about a legitimately moving experience while listening to this album. I think the title of the album is a good example of his lyrical style. A shepherd in a sheepskin vest. Kind of a play on a sheep in wolf's clothing and that whole thing, but the question of relationship between the shepherd, which is a very strong pastoral image. He actually talks a lot about nature imagery and animal imagery. There's a whole menagerie in this album. All these different animals that he talks about that have different representations, I imagine. And he often does that in his music. And then on top of that, you have this sort of what does he mean? Is he saying that he's not safe to other people aren't safe to him? It's an interesting and challenging question. As far as music goes, I suppose he's classified as lo-fi, but I don't really like that term. I didn't really know what it means. But it's very minimal. It's like acoustic guitar and his voice, a very deep baritone, bass, I don't know, a deep low voice. Like my friend Brad, a deep low voice and minimal guitar and just a little bit of pedal steel here and there. When I listened to Smog, that's actually what opened the gates for me to understand that the sounds of country music could be good. It was thanks to Smog that I ultimately discovered Hank Williams, 60 years previously. But that style of painful, lonely, introspective music with simple, basically untrained musicians and a little bit of pedal steel. You put that all together and you have Bill Callahan. It's an 18-minute album. This album is so good, I'll probably end up talking about it for more than 18 minutes. In a way, it actually reminded me a lot of the Mountain Goats in that same way, where it's this person I related to when I was younger. Except I think Bill Callahan, honestly, his melodies are better, his voice is better. I like the instrumentation better, and he doesn't really sing in the third person as much. He sings about himself, you know. On that last Mountain Goats album, there's a song called the Tale of Doc Gooden, and it's all about that baseball player. And it's this like meaningful song about coming back from a low point, blah blah blah. But you compare that to like the weird pop culture song on this album, the Ballad of the Hulk, and you realize he's using the Hulk to express his own feelings. It's about himself. So let's get on with the album. I'm gonna go track by track because it's a really short album and it's really good. Highly, I'm on a roll. Between Injured Reserve yesterday and Bill Callahan today, I'm having a great music week. So, it starts off with a song called Shepherd's Welcome, and it's kind of intentionally raw and distorted, and he does something on this album a couple times, where it starts off very minimal, kind of distorted and raw, and then like a band comes in, and it doesn't quite reach a crescendo. Like, he doesn't ever get you to like, yeah, it's rocking. Like, he gets you right to that point, and then leaves you there. The lyrics are, I mean, the chords are actually kind of jazzy if you listen to them. Like, if you were to chart them out, they're kind of jazzy chords. It doesn't really feel like folk, I guess, for that reason. I mean, if I told you it was a beautiful lyrics about pine trees being sung with an acoustic guitar, you'd assume I'm talking about a folk album, but I'm not. You know, this imagery that he's using, where he talks about cutting down a pine tree to build a floor, and he's talking about, like, he asked this question. Has a shepherd ever, what's the line? I'm sorry, I wrote it down here while I was there. Have you ever been a shepherd who doesn't want to find his sheep? Something like that. And then he talks about a dream about a black dog on the beach. And then that's the next track. So I'm going to play you a little bit of that here on my trusty computer. And, computer. And I will sort of explain it as you hear it. And this is a great example of the kind of soundscape that Smog puts forth.
Have you ever seen a shepherd afraid to find his sheep? Have you ever seen a shepherd afraid to find his sheep? Sing it. Where did you sleep?
That feeling that you have of like a guy at the edge of his rope, alone in a room. Did you have that dream again of the black dog on the beach? A guy alone in his room, staring into the mirror for like 45 minutes. Like just staring.
Black dog on the beach.
And just losing his mind. But then being able to put that to music. And then that leads right into the song Black Dog on the Beach, which is another excellent song in that similar kind of minimalist rock style. Nice thing about Black Dog on the Beach, I'm not going to play the whole thing, is that it makes me realize how much I love Neil Young. Because it's not copying Neil Young, but there's certain elements, and the way that the pedal steel is used is similar to Neil Young's minimalistic usage of a pedal steel, and the harmonica that he plays is like Neil Young harmonica. And I don't think Neil Young gets enough credit as like the greatest rock harmonica player. Why? Because he doesn't play that much. It's not like Dylan, you know, where you have to like, right? And it's not like Blues Traveler, whatever that nightmare is. It's like just little accents here or there. And I think that that's what this Black Dog on the Beach is like. This song appears to be mostly about his father issues. That's something I've always loved about him. He's very out front with his father issues. He has these amazing turns of phrase. Like he talks about the discipline of having company. Just listen, you're watching this video, you're waiting to hear the story about Joe from Cape Cod. So I'll just let you think about that concept for like 3 seconds. The discipline of company. It's a great lyric. And then he talks about the lion leaving his family crest. This guy, he's on another world. He's writing such good lyrics. And then things take like another turn on the next track, Angela. It's a little bit too jazzy for me musically, but I'll tell you about the power of his lyrics, okay? So I'm currently, I'm engaged, and my fiance and I are currently like going through trouble that is coming from an external source. And it's completely out of our control, and it's very troubling, and it's difficult. We'll get through it. It'll be fine. But it's an external source that's out of our control that's causing us trouble. So I'm sitting here on the elliptical, and I'm going back and forth, and I'm sweating, and I'm thinking about my music and my channel and my life and putting in final grades and all this other stuff. And then this lyric hits me. Now imagine you're like me. You're in love. You're thinking about the future, and some external force comes in and threatens it. And you hear this lyric. Love goes on like bird song, as soon as possible after a bomb. And I'm not exaggerating, I literally wept. I literally wept. I was crying on the elliptical. This idea of love going on, like, it's true, like when a bomb falls, the birds start singing as quickly as they can. You know, this disaster and death and murder and blood and bleeding and the bleh and the eyeballs, his eyes was on me. It doesn't matter. The birds come back and they start singing as soon as they can. And that's the power of Bill Callahan's lyrics. That's why I was just ridiculous not to listen to it. I think it's okay I took a break from Mountain Goats. They're fine, but they're not my thing. But this, when I was a young man and I was listening to songs like Ex-Con, where he's talking about feeling like an ex-con when he's trying to be respectable. That's how I felt. When he wrote songs about his father coming home at 8, nearly splintering the gate. Even saying that I literally have chills, remembering the feeling that I had of remembering my father's anger issues and connecting them to the way that he described his cold-blooded old times. He is a master of these lyrics. But what's amazing is that these are not depressing lyrics. I mean, it's just a little bit depressing. But really, what it's about is this hope and connection that things will work. God, it's just wonderful. So, that's what he's able to do. He moves on. The next song is called Ballad of the Hulk. And what I like is that this is... I think if you said to him that there's a thing called a Marvel movie, he wouldn't know what you're talking about. This is a song about the 1980s, 70s TV show, The Incredible Hulk. And it's about anger and about not being able to connect to your old anger and allowing anger to pass. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful song that has nothing to do with what we think of when we talk about the Hulk now. And again, the instrumentation on here is not quite as good. It's got this kind of drum machine. I don't know. But really nice layered acoustic guitars as well. Then there's a song called Writing. Not at all my favorite. It's about inspiration. It's about making music. I don't know. Maybe if I was following him and this has been like a long time since his last album, I don't know. But I didn't quite connect to it. And then he goes out with Morning is My Godmother, which is this other mystical nature side where he's talking his natural side. He's a mystic, really. He's like a mystic of nature, I think. Like he goes into nature and feels inspiration and comes up with lines like on that Angela song about, a flower, a storm doesn't ask the flower for the rain, just like, just beautiful lyrics. I feel like Dennis Hopper in Apocalypse Now talking about Kurtz. Because if he dies, man, then we die. And if we die, he's a vision, man. But seriously, that's the kind of inspiration that I feel while listening to this. He's just his musicianship perfectly matches his lyrics. And his lyrics are slightly desolate, slightly hopeful, and insanely piercing. And in this song about nature is interesting. And at the end, it basically gets rocking. Like he almost rocks you out of the album. Like there's like a synthesizer and some drums going. I'll get it playing here. Except my Wi-Fi doesn't work too well in here. Alright, maybe you won't hear it. I don't know. Morning is My Godmother by Bill Callahan. The rocking bit at the end. Which I think is kind of a note of hope after kind of a difficult... Oh. Right. Okay, that doesn't sound very rocking, does it? Here we go. So, there's a bass and layered guitars and people singing and drums. There you go. Alright, you know what? The video took us a dip there, but now you get to hear my 3 Smog stories. Number 1, Joe from Cape Cod. I was introduced to Smog by my friend Joe Gargalinski, who I went to college with. and he's from Cape Cod, and he made a mix, and he put 3 Smog songs on the mix, and it literally changed my life. I heard those songs, and I said, I have to figure out who this guy is. I have to know that there's music like this. I have to make music like this. This ultimately led to me discovering Hank Williams and the Modern Lovers and just this whole world of rock and roll that could sound like that. I lost touch with Joe. He changed his name to Sullivan, or O'Sullivan, and try to find someone named Joe O'Sullivan in Massachusetts, and it's basically impossible. It's a needle in the haystack. So I tried to reach him, but he is not connected to our college server. Like, you know how like you can just write to connect to alumni? There's a list of like 4 people on that list. There's me, there's my ex-wife, there's the girl I was attracted to but never asked out as a freshman in college, and then there's Joe. They're the 4 people who there's no information. The college doesn't know how to get a hold of us. So I can't get a hold of Joe. I want to tell him that in 2002, when I was at the low point of my life, I was going through this divorce, I was driving with Brad across the country. And Joe had also introduced me into, what's it called? Coast to Coast, this weird radio show where they talked about like aliens and stuff. And he would say that he listened to it all the time. And he introduced me to this, just like he introduced me to Smog. And here I am, 3 years after having talked to Joe for the last time. And I'm driving through Kansas, driving back to Boston from Los Angeles with Brad after I'd just broken up with my future ex-wife, current ex-girlfriend. And I was all sad and depressed. And there, on national radio, is Joe's voice. And he says, and the question is, what would you give America right now out of 10? How do you think it's doing? And he gave it a 2. And I've been waiting to meet Joe and just say, a 2? If that was a 2, what is it now? But I haven't met him. Story number 2 about Smog. I saw him perform in Marseille. And it was funny because when you're in France, there's not a lot of dudes with beards. Okay, just they're clean shaven, they look good. They don't have nasty, funky beards. So when I went to see Smog in Marseille, it was a great show. He and I were the only 2 men in the audience who had beards. And I remember feeling like connected and like back home, because Smog is a very, very American band. 3rd story. Last time I heard Smog was actually on the Adam Carolla podcast. And if you can find it, you should listen to it, because it's one of the great mismatches of all time. Unfortunately, Adam Carolla's political stances have taken a turn, and it's really hard to listen to him. But he is legitimately a broadcasting genius. And I don't use that term, I don't like float around with that term. Like, he is a broadcasting genius. He's so quick on his feet. He has so many interesting ideas. He has all these great things. I'm very thankful for what he did, even though now he's just kind of an angry old man, but not in a funny way. But he had Bill Callahan on, and it was just so terrible because Bill Callahan didn't know who he was, and he didn't know who Bill Callahan was. So here's like 2 of my great heroes meeting, and is the biggest dud. Like, neither of them gets each other's sense of humor. Neither one of them knew when they were being ironic, and this is my dream. I wish I could get them back together again to talk about the 1970s, 1980s TV show, The Incredible Hulk. One of Adam Carolla's longest rants is talking about the TV show Kung Fu and Incredible Hulk and Billy Jack, just about how there's this whole series of shows in the 70s that were just people walking from town to town saying, I don't want trouble, and then getting into trouble. I want to be a matchmaker and get them back together, but I don't think it's going to happen. All right, so 3-word review. I don't know, I'll figure it out later. I love this. Listen to this. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful album. Okay, until next time, there's the camera.